I love fantasy. I love it in any form, whether it's epic fantasy, grimdark fantasy, Polish fantasy, space fantasy, fucking fantasy, and of course, the feel-good fairy tale-esque fantasy. And my favorite example of the last one is the movie Stardust, a movie released in the year 2007, directed by Matthew Vaughn and based on the novel of the same name written by Neil Gaiman. But I'm not gonna say anything about the novel because I haven't read it. And just to warn anyone who cares about spoilers, I'll be spoiling pretty much the whole movie, so you have been warned. So what is the movie about? Well, it basically has 3 plot threads, but before we get to them, a bit of backstory. Before the movie proper begins, we hear some narration by none other than Sir Ian McKellen himself.
A philosopher once asked, "Are we human because we gaze at the stars? Or do we gaze at them because we are human?"
And yeah, the title of the movie is not the only thing that's star-studded. The cast is as well, as you'll see soon. Then we move to a small village in the English countryside called Wold, named like that because right next to it is a wall that separates our boring old world from the magical kingdom of Stormhold. And a young man is trying to convince the old man guarding a hole in the wall to let him cross, because he thinks there's nothing magical on the other side. Of course the guard doesn't let him through, but the young man outsmarts him and crosses the wall. He then arrives at a market full with fantastical things, and there he meets a girl that is a slave to a witch, and she sells him a magical flower for a kiss. They spend the night together, and 9 months later the young man gets a surprise gift left for him by the wall. Fast forward 18 years and the proper story can begin. So the first plot thread follows Tristan, played by Charlie Cox, the son of the young man and the slave girl from the beginning. He's trying to win over the affection of a girl from his village named Victoria, but is constantly foiled in his attempts by his better-than-him-in-every-way rival in love, Humphrey, played by Henry Cavill. So one night he takes Victoria to a picnic, to try and woo her, and there they see a falling star. But this was no ordinary falling star. And to explain why, I need to switch to the second plot thread. You see, when Tristan and Victoria were having their picnic, the King of Stormhold, played by Peter O'Toole, was on his deathbed discussing the succession of the throne with his sons. See, in Stormhold they have this tradition, for lack of a better word, where the male heirs of the king kill each other before the king dies, and the last one left becomes the next king. But this time there were 4 heirs left, until there were only 3. So the king takes his necklace, drains the color out of the jewel on it, and says that only a male heir of the Stormhold royal blood can restore the gem, and the one who does so will be crowned king. Then the necklace darts off into the skies and hits a star, the same one that Tristan and Victoria saw, and the star falls somewhere in Stormhold, and it turns out it's a woman. This is also where the third plot thread comes into play. The falling star was also seen by these 3 old crones. They are witches, and they want to find the star to cut out her heart, so they could eat it because it gives them back their youth and power. Back to that later. So Tristan says to Victoria he would bring her the fallen star for her hand in marriage, and she agrees, but only if he manages to bring it back by her birthday the next week. And so we have a Mexican standoff to see who gets to the star first. Tristan wants to bring her to Victoria to marry her, the princes want her because she has the necklace, and the witches want to eat her heart. Anyway, Tristan tries to cross the wall and fails miserably.
Off you go.
But he found out his father crossed the wall in the past, so he goes home to ask him about it. There, his father tells him about his little adventure and gives him a letter from his mother that had a candle wrapped up in it that teleports him to where the star fell. And when Tristan finds out Yvain is the star, oh yeah, her name is Yvain, and she's played by Claire Danes. He chains her with a piece of magical chain his mother was chained with and forces her to march back to the wall, even though her leg was injured from the fall. Also, he could present her as a prize to his crush in hopes of getting under her skirt. Who said romance is dead? Meanwhile, the three princes... Sorry, I meant two princes. Head off to search for the necklace, and the three witches decide one of them will go fetch the star and heal her heart so it will have maximum potency when they eat it. Oh, and they give the chosen one the rest of the heart left from the previous star they murdered, and she turns into Michelle Pfeiffer. Getting back to Tristan and Yvain, Tristan decides to let Yvain rest a bit while he gets some food and drinks from a nearby town. But he still chains her up to a tree so she won't escape. And while waiting for him, a unicorn comes and saves Yvain by severing the magical chain and letting her ride it. At the same time, the witch sets up a trap for Yvain by hocus-pocusing an inn out of a carriage and some helpers out of goats. So Yvain waltzes right into the inn to find some shelter, and the witch immediately starts bothering her up. Meanwhile, Tristan gets a telepathic warning from another star that Yvain's in danger and that he has to get on a carriage that's coming towards him by any means. The said carriage happens to be driven by one of the two remaining princes, and Tristan offers him his help if he gives him a ride. The prince agrees and they wind up at the same inn Yvain is at. Tristan goes to take care of the horses while the prince enjoys a nice bath, and he sees Yvain and after some bragging about how big his carriage is, notices the necklace she's wearing, and when he realizes it's the one he's searching for, demands she gives it to him, but his quest to be king is cut short by the witch. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention it, but all the dead princes are present in the form of ghosts and are following the important characters around. And I like how they retain the appearance they had in the moment they died. Anyway, Tristan gets saved from being poisoned by the unicorn that helped Yvain, the witch's plan is ruined by the appearance of Tristan and the prince, and this happens. Gets me every time. So to escape from the witch, Tristan uses what's left of the teleporting candle to escape into the skies with Yvain, where they meet the best character in the whole movie, Captain Shakespeare, played by Robert De Niro. He's here, he's queer. No, really, he is. They made that abundantly clear. And he's a weeb for England, so when he finds out Tristan is from England, he immediately decides to help them. He gives them food, clothes, teaches them various things, and helps our plucky protagonist go from "nice to meet you, sir" to "your daughter calls me daddy too." After staying in his and his crew's company, Captain Shakespeare drops them off near Wall and gives some final advice before saying goodbye. They then hitch a ride from the witch that enslaved Tristan's mother, but they don't see her because she's turned into a bird. She also turns Tristan into some rodent, but does nothing to Yvain because the witch that wants to eat her heart put a spell on her so she wouldn't be able to perceive the star. Anyway, Yvain goes in the carriage with Tristan, and thinking he can't understand her in his current form, confesses she's fallen in love with him, and when they arrive to the market town near the wall, and Tristan is turned back into a human, they go to an inn because Tristan is feeling a little tipsy from the transformation. There he tells Yvain he understood what she said when he was a mouse and feels the same, and they proceed to spend a romantic evening together while one of the ghost princes watches. The next morning, Tristan wakes up early, takes a lock of Yvain's hair and leaves, but not before leaving a message for Yvain with the innkeeper about going to Victoria to tell her he found his true love. So he gets to Victoria, gives her a piece of the star he promised, tells her to fuck off and settles things with Humphrey. Before Victoria tosses the handkerchief with Yvain's hair back to Tristan, saying she doesn't care for some stardust. And sure enough, when Tristan sees that the handkerchief contains dust instead of hair, he realizes Yvain will turn into a piece of space rock if she crosses the wall and rushes back to her. Meanwhile, Yvain wakes up and looks for Tristan, and when she heard the message Tristan left with the innkeeper, she misunderstands it and goes after him to Wall. Tristan's mother, now back in human form, sees her and tries to stop her, but Yvain couldn't hear her, so she locks her witch master in the carriage and rides after Yvain. She catches up to her just as she was about to cross the wall, but so does the witch that was after Yvain. She kills the other witch and takes Yvain and Tristan's mother with her, and soon after Tristan arrives at the scene. He heard what happened from the terrified guard at the wall and rushes after them. He gets to the witch's hideout, and while assessing the situation through the window, he gets caught off guard by the last prince, Septimus, who is played by Mark Strong, by the way. who is still looking for the necklace, but also wants the star's heart so he could live forever. They form an alliance in order to take down the witches and burst into the house. Septimus attacks Tristan's mother, mistaking her for a witch, but recognizes her as his sister Una. He lets her go and dispatches of one witch, while she goes to Tristan and tells him she's his mother. Meanwhile, Septimus is getting voodooed and ends up a little out of breath. So it falls on Tristan to take care of the other witches and save Yvain. He beats one with the help of some animals and knocks the other one out, but she gets up and proves too powerful for him to handle. Fortunately, Yvain rises up to the occasion and defeats her with the power of love. They proceed to leave when Tristan grabs the jewel from the king's necklace, and since he is the king's descendant, the jewel regains its color, proving Tristan is the rightful king of Stormhold. So he gets crowned king with Yvain as his queen, his parents are reunited and they all have a big party to celebrate, and they lived happily ever after. And that's the movie. It certainly didn't break the mold or innovate the formula, but it did tell a good story with likable characters and some we like to hate. And there is something charming about it, for lack of a better word. It combines the tone of modern fairy tale movies with the more mature one of the original tales they are based on, so it has death and violence, while still keeping it PG, but it never gets dark and depressing, and I'm all about that. So if that sounds like something you might like, give it a try. Or don't, I'm not your mother, but if you do end up watching it because of this video and liking it, you're welcome. Anyway, until next time, bye!